A few years back, my wife came to me and said she wanted us to move to Canada. She felt like where we were living wasn't safe enough to raise a family, and honestly, I kinda got it. I understood where she was coming from. I mean, it wasn't an unreasonable thing to want, and she had clearly been thinking about it for a while before she even brought it up, which meant by the time I was hearing the idea for the first time, she was already several steps ahead of me emotionally. And the worst part is I knew it was a mistake, which I realize is a weird thing to say with that much confidence. But I did, not because I had some deep insight into how things would play out, but because the math didn't work. We were already in debt, real debt. The kind where you open the banking app and then immediately close it because you'd rather just not know. And I knew that moving to another country, starting over, paying for the move, paying for the school, paying for everything from scratch meant going deeper into that hole. I told her this, but she pushed back, and I let it go. Because in my head at the time, the worst outcome wasn't going to Canada and struggling. The worst outcome was saying no and watching her resent me for it for the rest of our lives. So I chose a version of the future where at least she'd be happy, even if I wasn't sure about the rest. So we started planning. We hired an agency. I got accepted into a college. We bought the plane tickets. We said goodbye to everybody. And then we flew. Her, me, and our 3 dogs. Which, if you've never traveled internationally with dogs, I wouldn't recommend it. It's genuinely one of the worst experiences I've ever had. But then again, I would have never left them behind. It was just not an option. But we made it, and for a little while, things were good. Or at least they felt good, which I think is an important distinction. There's something about arriving somewhere new that tricks you into thinking you're making progress just because everything looks different. You're exploring, you're figuring things out. Everything has this sense of possibility to it. Things were so different. The city was gorgeous. I mean, a lot of Canadian cities are just beautiful. The one we arrived to was not different. And it's really easy to confuse those feelings with things actually going well. They were not going well. The money ran out faster than I expected, which is saying something because I already expected it to run out fast. I was working and going to school at the same time. She had her remote job in the evenings and weekends and then picked up a second job at a convenience store. Our dogs got sick, all 3 of them, shortly after we arrived. I still don't know if it was a climate change or something that happened during the trip, but we had to spend a significant amount of money on vet bills. Money that I cannot stress this enough, we did not have. And then the things I was supposed to be holding together just started falling apart. School was the first thing to go. I just couldn't keep up. I was exhausted. I was distracted with work. I was stressed about money every waking moment. And the coursework needed a version of me that just was not there. So I stopped showing up for class and only relied on studying the class materials for tests and half-assing all of my homework and projects. Which sounds casual when I say it like that, but it wasn't casual at all. It was this slow, quiet failure where every week I told myself I'd catch up and every week I just didn't. Weekends came and went and I just couldn't catch up. Work started slipping too. I was making mistakes, missing things. The quality of what I was producing dropped because there just wasn't enough of me to go around. I was supposed to be the one who had the financial side handled. That was kind of my thing. That was the one area where I could look at her situation and say, hey, at least this is working, or at least it'll work out soon. But then it just never did. Meanwhile, she was falling apart in her own way. The convenience store job was genuinely terrible for her. People were awful. And I don't mean rude in the way that customers are sometimes rude. I'm talking about Canada's drug problem kind of bad, where a lot of people just would go in and steal and be aggressive, and just some of them were literally zombies just walking through the store, taking stuff and then leaving. It was just so stressful. And then one day, a teenager who was just stealing from the store attacked her, literally assaulted her, grabbed her by the hair and threw her to the ground, where she turned her back to them. I think about that more than I probably should, because as a man, having your wife attacked like that and not being able to do absolutely anything about it is just, it fucks with your mind in a way that few things do. And here's what made it worse. She couldn't say she wanted to come home. She had fought so hard to get us there. She had convinced me, she had done the research, we had planned for months, we had paid all these bills, we had taken out all these loans. She had pushed through every obstacle, and now she was working a job that was physically hurting her in a country that didn't feel like hers, and the one thing she couldn't do was admit that it wasn't working. She couldn't easily change jobs because we were trying to get a residency, and the only way to do that is by staying in a job for a specific amount of time. So leaving would mean admitting that all of it, the debt, the move, the goodbye to our families and friends, all of it was just for nothing. So instead, she just kept going, and I watched her wither. Which is a dramatic word, but I don't have a better one. She got smaller, quieter, more tired. The version of her that excitedly told me about Canada was gone, and in her place was someone who just was trying to survive each day, fighting the regret of having pushed us so hard to get there, only to find out it was not a good call. I didn't tell her any of this because I was doing the exact same thing. Neither of us had friends. She had some coworkers, but no real connections. And me, have never been great at making friends. I talked to people at school, and a couple of them were you could tell they were trying to be my friend. But I just never talked to them in a way that felt real. So my wife and I just became everything to each other, which sounds romantic if you don't think too hard about it. But the two people who were both falling apart, we were each other's only support system. And then winter came. And if you don't know, winters in Canada can be ruthless. I actually liked it at first, which I feel a little guilty about. I personally work from home, so I experience the cold mostly through a window, which is a fundamentally different thing than being out in it. And that is not to say I never got to suffer the cold. I did on a few times I needed to go to class for a quiz or a presentation, but she was out in it. In the minus 40 degrees, walking to work, waiting for buses, standing behind a counter in a store that sometimes didn't seem warm enough. We fell asleep most nights holding each other, not talking, just sort of silently staring at each other, just trying to read our thoughts, silently agreeing that tomorrow would be better. And I don't think we've ever felt as close to each other than we did during those nights. I also don't think I've ever felt more alone, which doesn't make sense, but it's true. And then eventually I said the thing. I told her I thought we should go home, that it wasn't worth watching each other dissolve over a plan that was supposed to make things better. And she was hesitant at first. She wanted to say no. And then I told her a lie just to make her feel better about it. I told her I could afford the plane tickets back, that I had it covered, that I had the cash, that she should just quit the store job and just rest for a while before we left. But the truth was that I could not afford those tickets back, so I took out another loan to buy them, and I told myself again that this was what love looked like, protecting her from one more thing she didn't need to carry. And I'm still paying for that loan, by the way, and a few others that I'm going to talk about in a second. But something happened in those last few weeks before we left. She quit her job. We started going on walks together, long ones, by the way, in the afternoon, sometimes early morning, sometimes late at night. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, in a way we hadn't talked in months. She started to look like herself again. She was happy. And then one of her dogs died. She'd been with me for 12 years. She was, and I don't think this was an exaggeration, my best friend. It felt like the last thing, like the universe had been slowly taking everything from us and decided it just wasn't finished yet. I don't have a graceful way to talk about that, it broke me. We got rid of her stuff, we packed what was left, we flew home. And now we're here. And in order to pay for everything, I had to take out yet another loan. And then bills started stacking up, and just loan after loan, and the financial situation just got worse. But we made a promise to each other when we got back, that we'd stop living for the future version of our lives and just try to exist in the one we have right now. And that sounds nice when I say it. It sounds like the kind of thing someone says at the end of the video to wrap things neatly. But the truth is, we keep that promise some days and we break it others. Some mornings I wake up and everything just feels manageable. Other mornings I open that banking account and see the debt from a trip I knew was a mistake before we even got on a plane. And I feel every single decision that led to that number. I've been trying to figure out what the actual failure was for a long time. I thought it was Canada. I thought it was the move, the money, the timing, all of it, but I don't think that's right anymore. I think the failure was that I knew what I thought and I didn't fight for it. I said my piece once, it wasn't received well, and I backed down because I was more afraid of conflict than I was of the consequences. And then I spent a couple of years trying to hold together something I didn't truly to my core believe in, failing at every part of it, school, work, money, and lying about the parts I couldn't fix because I wanted to be the person who had it handled. I wanted to be that person so badly that I went into that twice trying to prove I was. And I'm not telling you this because I figured it out. I'm telling you this because I'm still in it. The debt's still there, the guilt's still there. Mia, my best friend, she's still gone. But we're home, and most days, that's enough. Most days. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, alright?